right, thank you so much, Maribel, Lola, Adolfo, the whole team. It's great to be with you all. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. So on the heels of this discussion about travel, I'd like to bring in the technology aspect as to how can we have digital identity, grease the skids to re-enable this key engine of economic growth, and how has that changed with COVID? So if you could go to the next slide, please. So as Maribel mentioned, I'm the CEO of Airside, and we've been working with the WTTC with a number of groups, the Safe and Seamless Travel Journey, the Women's Initiative, the COVID Task Force. So it's great to be with a whole host of partners here today. Next slide, please. I'll be touching on three topics. One is how has COVID changed the digitization of identities? We saw some of that thread in the conversation just prior. What is our perspective on it, and what is the future of seamless travel as it relates to identity and reigniting this critical economic driver, travel? Next slide. So as we were just talking about, there is a ton of pent-up demand. We were just hearing about, the 2 million, TSA, throughput, domestic leisure travel in the US going up. We have our focus both on domestic as well as international travel. You can see based on this data from A4A, that bright yellow line is Mexico. And you can see how that's really taken off relative to, March of last year when the COVID virus first impacted us. So you can see that Mexico and Latin America is going up really fast, as is domestic. Obviously, with the July changes with Europe, hopefully transatlantic travel will follow in the same way, and we can begin to see these kinds of trends. And, I think people are sick of sitting on Zooms in their houses and eager to get out and about in a safe way. That's evident here. On the next slide, in terms of how has COVID changed health data attitudes? Here's some interesting data from the Pew Trust as to people's attitude towards sharing of data, downloading data to apps, government standards, the robust discussion we were just having to improve matching and enable, this flow of data in terms of people's health status. And look at that far left-hand column in terms of more likely to support, changing dramatically. And I think this is because people understand the link between travel and health data being an enabler to travel from a societal sense as well as a personal sense. So this is certainly encouraging in terms of greater engagement with mobile in terms of personal health information. Next slide, please. And then in terms of how is that information shared, right, to the comment of, okay, is it a piece of paper? Is it something digital? I think travelers are increasingly comfortable using biometrics for enabling the sharing of records. Obviously, healthcare is a huge industry, and with a graying, looks like my light here automatically went off. Not moving enough. I guess I need to travel more. In terms of the comfort level for fingerprint scans, for smartphone usage, all of that is significantly going up if you look at the middle and the far left column. And obviously, from our perspective, we are keenly dialed into this in terms of what we've been doing. So now let me segue to sort of Airside's perspective on this on the next slide. For those of you who are not familiar with us, we launched Mobile Passport back in 2014. We've processed about 20% of all eligible travelers into the US, and the US CBP is going to be expanding mobile passport control, so we anticipate this going up significantly more. We've got nearly 10 million users of our mobile app, and they're using this to get through customs faster. And if you think about the IATA data that was just shared in terms of the forecast of how long the lines are going to be, 1.5 hours to 4 hours to 8 hours is kind of an frightening kind of dimension. So that really suggests the need for mobile technology and interoperability and digitization to really reduce that so that it's a better experience and a more economic experience for everybody involved. So on the next slide, really it was October of last year that we launched our digital identity app. We launched it with one of the largest carriers in the world, starting with biometric bag drop, expanding to lounge check-in, and we'll be expanding that further in terms of a multi-point touchless biometric journey using biometrics. And obviously seamless and touchless is a critical thing now, not only from a convenience standpoint, like how it used to be before, but if you anticipate the length of lines and then the health security concerns, it's absolutely critical. On the next slide, you can see what the benefits are for people. We were having a discussion a moment ago in terms of multiple apps and multiple systems and people getting very confused and frustrated about what they need to do. We agree with that wholeheartedly. And in fact, we are one of the enabling layers that would allow you to verify once and share across the travel journey. Reusability, we think, is absolutely going to be key. So now I'm talking about, core digital identity aspects, which could include your passport, and that could also have integrated with it your vaccination status, for instance. So it's really important for consumers to validate once, enroll once, and use many, and do so with very much of a privacy and security mindset. I think that is the other half of what we need to do to reignite travel and make sure people are comfortable sharing their information so that they have revocability of data, proof of consent, all of those kinds of principles that are key to GDPR and CCPA, and what will be increasingly driven from a privacy-centric. I'm sure you all have seen Apple's commitment to that as well, and privacy nutrition labels and all that sort. So we've been fierce proponents of privacy for a while. On the next slide, from a relying party standpoint, if we put ourselves in the shoes of airlines and airports, and frankly, a variety of the biometric companies we partner with, it's clear that in order to enable the resumption of travel, it needs to be really easy on the business or the enterprise or the government side as well. So that's authentic verification with identities that have been validated with the source data, simple integrations with APIs, cost-effective matching that integrates into all the legacy systems that are, of course, throughout the travel industry. And then from a compliance perspective, there's a Gartner stat talking about how nearly two-thirds, about 65% of countries are going to be increasing their privacy requirements and regulations over the next few years. How to do that in an effective manner without having to host galleries that are populated with this, potentially toxic data from a facial standpoint of hundreds and hundreds of millions of faces. So it's got to be easy for the airlines. And obviously, I talked about the customer experience being key. Certainly, if you think about data breaches and what's in the news every single day, we are also fierce proponents of a decentralized system so that you don't have this big centralized honeypot. So security is the other critical aspect. Big topic today, obviously, is COVID. So we have introduced a health pass, total agreement that it would be wonderful if all of these initiatives that we've been talking about result someday. Obviously, it won't be this summer, certainly not in the US, someday in a universal or global way to access health records That's not the case today. So the next best thing, frankly, is to tie it to verified digital ID so that you can take a variety of health information, be it tests, be it vaccination data from, hundreds of countries around the world, tie it to verified digital ID, and then enable that in a variety of ways. That could be a flash pass, it could be API integrations, basically to keep people moving in a safe and seamless way. So we've done that and are proud to continue focusing on that. On the next slide, you can see how does the technology layer really enable safe and seamless travel. So we call it sort of enroll, tap and go. How do you have that VIP experience from the consumer standpoint and the economic benefits from the relying party standpoint? If you download the app, verify once, as you can see, it's step 1 and step 2. You can then give the consumer the ability to share that verified information across a travel journey and have the consumer very clearly know and consent. That could include, airplanes, it could include cruise lines, it could include hotels, and frankly, we're involved in a variety of non-travel things as well. That could be online discounts, that could be other kinds of things. If you think about ID as something you need to share across a range of what you do to live, that's really sort of the next wave of digital identity. Obviously, biometrics is a key enabler to kind of making that customer experience easier, which is why, as you can see on the next slide, we believe that interoperability is key to seamless travel. We've partnered with all of the companies, including Amadeus and Visionbox and Thales and Tassent and Materna, in addition to a whole bunch of other companies that you've seen on this slide, to make sure that we can provide a digital token, if you will, that can be shared throughout the tech stack, throughout multiple points in the traveler journey, in order to deliver on this promise of safe and seamless travel. We are definitely, by virtue of our Kantara membership and a number of other standards bodies we belong to, believers in open and interoperability, openness and interoperability in terms of how our technology works.